On the opposite end of it, it is heartbreak for the Edmonton Oilers. That was such an unbelievable comeback for Edmonton in this series. All season long, having to battle out of a hole that they dug themselves, but having to battle back, and they get so close. Even in this game, down 2-1, or at least, like, look, down 1-0. Doesn't phase them. They come back, they score that goal. Reinhart gets a goal late-ish in period number 2, and they have to keep battling, and they have to keep battling, and they came that close. They have that scramble. Ekholm's pointing like it's in. That's how close it was to Edmonton being able to cash with 3 minutes left, and they just ran out. And it felt like that last little scramble there with 3 minutes left was everything they had. And like, just to show you how close they were, when Reinhart scores that goal, moments before that happens, Draisaitl with kind of a jam play at the side of the goal, and it just trickles. As the story goes along, Oilers fans, that will get closer and closer and closer and closer to the point where, oh yeah, it's scraped off of the post. It probably missed by a foot or two, but it just trickles wide. Florida comes back and Reinhart puts the puck on net. And that's your winner. That's how close they can. That's how close they came. But really and honestly, it feels like they ran out of gas. This team, by the end of this game, specifically McDavid and Draisaitl, and this is not a knock on them at all. It felt like they had nothing left by the end of it. Having to come back from that bad start, including the loss to San Jose to end San Jose's losing streak. Down 3-2 against Vancouver on the road for Game 7. Down 2-1 against the Dallas Stars as the lower seed in that series as well. Down 3-0 in this series, and down 1-0 and 2-1 in this game. They just kept having to battle back and battle back and battle back, and it was just one last hurdle that just felt too much for this team. And again, that is not in any way, shape, or form me criticizing these guys. Again, in any way. They are, and they were absolutely tremendous. And I think, like, Connor McDavid reached another level, and Draisaitl was obviously banged up throughout this series, and they gave it everything they had. They just didn't have anything left by the end. And you can look at, like, we were talking about the need for other players to step up early in this series. And Andrew brought this up on Game Over, and I completely agree. I don't think they trusted the depth enough late in this game. Like, it felt like McDavid and Draisaitl were out there for the last 5 minutes, and I don't think that is much of an exaggeration. I think, like, the way Henrique was, or the way Janmark was going, Henrique had a pretty good chance. I think you have to trust those guys just a little bit more in the final period of this game to give McDavid and Draisaitl a real legitimate breather to get back out there and get it going. This one, I'm not saying that cost them the Stanley Cup or anything like that. Although if Edmonton scores, I think they're winning. Like if they tie that game up, I think they're winning in overtime. But it was just, and it's a very easy thing to fall back on when you have two of the five best, maybe even two of the three best players in the world on your team. Yeah, I'll put them out there for as long as they can stand so we can get back in this thing and try to win it. When you're down by 1 in Game 7, I fully understand that, but it just felt like it maybe got to them at the end. When you take a look now at the bigger picture with Edmonton, I think it is easy to say, oh yeah, they'll be back. But it doesn't feel like this is the last time that they'll be back, right? Like, it does feel like, yes, like McDavid reaches another level that we didn't even think was possible. They have a good mix at forward, assuming they bring a lot of those guys back. They have a goalie that, for the most part, you trust in these games. And they do have some holes to fill. But with a defenseman or two that you trust, I feel like this roster can be really good. Like we talked about it last night. If you let CC go, like attach a pick to trade him out, and you bring in a Nikita Zadorov, and you go Nurse Broberg, Bouchard, Ekholm, and Kulak against and Zadorov as your top six. That's not like, if that same roster was here in Calgary with the forward group they have, we would be saying, okay, well, the rebuild is still on. But because you have McDavid and Draisaitl, that D is good enough that you can get back here. They only have $10 million in cap space, and they only have 14 roster spots filled right now. So they have to get creative. I would not be surprised if we get a Jack Campbell buyout in this time. I would try to move on from CC and Kane and try to get some cap space that way and be able to maneuver a few things. So they're absolutely going to have to be creative. But obviously the foundation is there. Now the bad news. They do have extensions for Bouchard, Draisaitl, and McDavid coming up in the next couple of years. And also, the Avalanche, Golden Knights, Stars, and I'll put Canucks in here, probably aren't going anywhere. The Kings are going to be interesting. I think the Jets are pretty close, given how good their goalie can be. The West is going to be a gauntlet. At some point, you have to figure Chicago is just going to be in this conversation again because of how damn good Connor Bedard is, right? And so I do think you have to. You do have to like really worry about things from an Oilers standpoint. But the Oilers deserve to be in that conversation, that this isn't just a fluke one-time thing. This is a team that absolutely deserves to be considered among the best of the best in the National Hockey League right now. And I was so entertained by this series, man. And I think from an Oilers fan standpoint, I think it's obviously heartbreaking today. This one is going to take a while to get over for sure. And I do think eventually, though, you will appreciate what an amazing run this was. And B, I do think that this will just be part of the story for Connor McDavid and part of the story for the Edmonton Oilers.